Hey everyone, it's Ryder from Skip. It's Thursday, August 12th. Very important update today on the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint that the Senate has passed. If this passes, this will be the greatest change to social welfare since the 1960s. That's over 6 decades. That's how important this is. I'm going to give a quick overview so you know what's being talked about in here. Again, the biggest change in most of our lifetimes is being proposed, and we want as many people to understand this as possible. If you want more people to see this, just give this video a quick thumbs up. That way YouTube knows to share this with more people. We would love to have more people in the US in the know about this, what's in, what's out, and what impact this will have for you. This is vitally important because, as we know, legislation matters. For all of you who are small business owners, independent contractors, self-employed, you know this all too well. With a lot of the SBA, EIDL grant and loan programs, especially with the targeted grants. So I'm going to talk about this. So I want to make sure you understand what's in this for you. Very important video, so hope you can watch until the end. Huge shout out to everyone who left comments in yesterday's video, sharing where you are at with SBA, EIDL grant and loan funding and other funding. If you do one thing today and you haven't downloaded our free Skip app, go ahead and do it. Yet again, we have a new version out today with new blog posts, new videos, and a new funding tracker. It is Hello Skip in the App Store and Google Play, or use the link right below. And later today, I will do an exclusive video on the app, so you don't want to miss out on that. Okay, let me dive in. Okay, here's the news from the New York Times. Senate passes $3.5 trillion budget plan, advancing safety net expansion. There is a lot in here. This blueprint would expand healthcare, provide free preschool and community college. Those are huge deals, by the way, and fund climate change programs. It passed along party lines and faces an arduous path ahead. Much of the spending would be paid for with higher taxes on wealthy people and corporations. Here is one of the main takeaways. This blueprint sets in motion a perilous legislative process aimed at creating the largest expansion of the federal safety net in nearly 6 decades. The House will return from its scheduled summer recess the week of August 23rd to take up the budget, so committees in both chambers can begin work fleshing out the party's vision for what would be the greatest change to social welfare since the 1960s Great Society. This is a big deal, so I'm giving it attention today, and I will give attention to it in the coming weeks, because without a doubt, what's in this bill, if it passes, will have a massive impact on you and your families. There is some opposition. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who is that key swing senator, along with Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, also often a swing vote in the Senate, said they voted for the budget blueprint to keep the process moving, but they may not support the expansive legislation that the budget vote protects from a Republican filibuster. Joe Manchin released a statement yesterday saying, quote, "serious concerns about the grave consequences facing West Virginians and every American family if Congress decides to spend another $3.5 trillion. And the context of the risks here are all over the place. There's always pros and cons, but we know inflation is a serious risk right now. The Wall Street Journal had several headlines today about inflation. New numbers came out. Consumer prices rose 5.4% from a year earlier in July, the same annual rates as June, but the monthly pace slowed. In an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, Biden has an inflation problem. Real average hourly earnings have declined for several months. We know that these higher consumer prices are impacting society broadly. Higher costs for the things you buy. There's also labor shortages, supply chain issues. Here's a quote from another opinion piece. Historically, inflation has been particularly cruel to the working poor. Despite the economy's growth in 1981, the 12.5% inflation rate pushed some 2.5 million people, 2.2 million families, and 1 million children into poverty. This opinion piece was written by a former chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. President Biden gave the flip side. Here's his quote: "If your primary concern right now is the cost of living, you should support this plan, not oppose it. A vote against this plan is a vote against lowering the cost of healthcare, housing, childcare, elder care, and prescription drugs for American families." And as I've reported on, there's also the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which Nancy Pelosi won't bring up in the House of Representatives unless the $3.5 trillion budget blueprint is also brought up as well. She will only allow a vote on infrastructure if the $3.5 trillion bill has a vote. Okay, here's what's in it. Let me go through it very quickly, just so you know, because there's a lot of incredibly important stuff in here. And the agreement of this $3.5 trillion in long-term investments, here in yellow, will be fully offset by a combination of new tax revenues, healthcare savings, and long-term economic growth. And this is not final, this is a draft from a few days ago, but it'll give you the important outline. I'll go through the main buckets of funding and what you should keep in mind. $135 billion for the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. A lot of this will go to agriculture conservation, drought, and forestry programs. There's been a lot of criticism about the U.S. forestry management related to the wildfires across the West. This money will go to help reduce carbon emissions and prevent wildfires. Wildfires that are impacting people across the country. $332 billion for the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. In green here, this will include down payment assistance, rental assistance, and other home ownership initiatives. So very helpful on the housing front if you need help with rental or home ownership. $83 billion in purple for the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Technology. This will include investments in technology, transportation, and more, as well as National Science Foundation research and technology money. In red, $198 billion for the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. One thing to mention here is this will include consumer rebates to weatherize and electrify homes. $67 billion in yellow for the Committee on Environment and Public Works. Again, there's a lot in here, and maybe part of the problem is lawmakers do a similar thing I'm doing, which is they focus on what they like without a deep understanding of the implications. We've seen this over the last year and a half, especially when it comes to SBA funding, where it's not very clear what a lot of these buckets mean. Of course, when we get the full legislation, I'll be sure to read all of it and interpret things, especially as they impact you. In blue here, this is a big one, Committee on Finance. Their role here is to have at least $1 billion in deficit reduction. So they're investing a lot of new stuff, but they believe the offset will make up for at least $1 billion elsewhere. Here are the investments. These are huge. Paid family and medical leave, ACA expansion, extension, and filling the Medicaid coverage gap, expanding Medicare to include dental, vision, hearing benefits, and lowering the eligibility age. That would be huge. Addressing healthcare provider shortages, child tax credit, EITC, CDCTC extension, long-term care for seniors and persons with disabilities, pro-worker incentives and worker support, health equity, housing incentives. There's tons in there. The offsets, here's what we know: corporate and international tax reform, tax fairness for high-income individuals. They say tax fairness as opposed to raising taxes for high-income individuals. But we do know, like I said, taxes will not be raised for any households earning less than $400,000. And IRS tax enforcement. They think more tax enforcement will also help offset things. In yellow, $726 billion for the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Another massive category here: universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, childcare for working families, tuition-free community college, school infrastructure, student success grants, educator investments, investments in primary care, including community health centers, National Health Service Corps, the Nurse Corps, and teaching health center graduate medical education, workforce development and job training, and so much more. I only pulled out a few right there. In green, $37 billion for the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. This includes electrifying the vehicle fleet and electrifying and rehabilitating federal buildings. Committee on the Judiciary, in red, $107 billion. One of the points here: lawful permanent status for qualified immigrants. Committee on Indian Affairs, $20.5 billion for Native health programs and facilities, Native education programs and facilities, Native American housing programs. Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, $25 billion to help small business access to credit, investment, and markets. Committee on Veteran Affairs, $18 billion, mainly for upgrades to VA facilities. Now, since the Finance Committee is the big one, where this budget resolution is saying we're going to make up over $1 billion here are 4 takeaways. $1.8 trillion in investments for working families, the elderly, and the environment. A historic tax cut for Americans making less than $400,000 a year, ensuring that the wealthy and large corporations pay their fair share of taxes, and hundreds of billions in additional savings by lowering the price of prescription drugs. So that's the quick summary. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Again, there's so much in here. It's going to go to the House. It's going to be reworked a little bit here. It does not have a clean path yet. Joe Manchin may oppose it. Again, he, of course, is in a very powerful position. He can help determine the fate of this, what's in, what's out, whether it gets passed at all. So much in here for the individuals, healthcare, climate change, and education. as well as housing. That's why they're calling this anti-poverty and climate change. Would love to hear what you think. Thank you for watching this important video. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and our One Ask today, if you haven't yet, go check out our app, HelloSkip, in the App Store and Google Play. If you're using it and loving it, consider leaving us an App Store or Google Play review. I'm going to give some review shout outs over the weekend. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.